Howdy, good morning, everyone. Let's talk about winter squash today. Thanksgiving's coming up. It's about to be the holiday season. Everyone loves squash with the holiday meals. So, how do you get the squash to be that perfect sweetness, the perfect ripeness, so you can have that delicious holiday meal that you want? Well, we're going to go over some of the steps to cover that because it can be tricky. It's not easy. And when you harvest it right, you allow the starches to turn into sugars to give you that flavor that you crave and you remember from when your grandma picked the squash right. So we'll go over that. So there are three signs that your squash is ripe. One is a deep, consistent color. So you want it to be rich and even, a little dull. You don't want it to be shiny. You don't want it to have green streaks. You don't want it to have glossy skin. Those are all signs that it's not quite ready. The rind, so the skin of the squash, you want it to be tough. So you can take your thumbnail and you press it into the skin, and if it leaves a mark, it's not quite ripe yet. The rind still hasn't cured. You can always allow it to cure longer after you harvest it if the skin color is correct. The rind will get hard after you pick it, but the color will not deepen any after you pick it. But a hard, durable rind is another way to know the squash is ripe and cured and ready. Another sign on the plant is the stem. When it looks dry and woody, that means the plant's not giving it any more nutrients anymore, so it's ready to be harvested. If it's still green, that means the plant is still giving it energy and it's still ripening. It's still adding starches to the fruit. Not all squashes are the same. So a couple varieties, some common varieties are butternut, acorn, spaghetti, delicata, kombucha, or buttercup. And they all have different cues. You can take a look at this article or reference this article to see it exactly. But for butternut, you're looking for that solid, deep tan, no green streaks. Acorn, it's a dark, dull green color. It loses its shine. If you start seeing acorn turning orange, that means it's gotten overripe. For spaghetti, you want the uniform golden yellow. Delicata, creamy yellow with dark green stripes. And then kombucha is a dark green as well with a dull finish. All of them are going to have dry and firm or dry and woody stems, and rind hardness are going to be hard. You're not going to want to penetrate it with your fingernail. The delicata will be the softest of all of them. And again, a lot of those, that rind hardness, that can do some of that curing after you harvest it. And we'll talk more about curing a little bit later. So thumbnail testness, when the plant is immature, and you can kind of see by the color that it's not that same deep color here. It's a kind of a bright color. It's got green streaks, and you can see where that fingernail penetrated the skin there. And you can see here where this fingernail is pressing in it, it's not going in. So that's how you know immature versus mature. But in addition to the rind, you can see in the color, these are not right either. You can see that this one's an immature color too. When you harvest your squash, you want to make sure to leave some of the stem. So when that stem comes off, that leaves an open wound for bacteria and fungus to get into, and it'll make your squash not harvest and last as long. So you're going to want to make sure when you cut it, you leave a couple inches of stem there and use clean, sharp shears. Again, breaking it off, twisting it injures the plant if you've still got other squash growing, or it can damage the stem and make it so it won't store as well. And that's not what we're looking to do. Here is a good chart to kind of look at the variety for what each of these varieties look like when they're ripe. And it has a couple other dates to go off of. So planting is not always the right thing to go off of. Weather can cause delays in pollination. Weather can cause delays in ripening. Your soil fertility, all of those things can impact when the squash is ready. So don't just look at that, but based on planting from the back of the packet, all of the squashes have varieties of days, from being as short as 75 at the acorn to as long as 110 at the kombucha. So from pollination, when the female flowers get out, you can kind of time it a little bit better from those days, and that's like a little bit tighter of a window. And it's now you've removed one of the weather variables for when the female flowers show up. So from that, almost all of them are 50 to 55 days. A couple of them are 55 to 60 days. Acorn and delicata are the shortest. But then it also has on here what color you're looking for and the curing time. And again, we'll talk about curing a little bit later, but that's how long it takes for the squash to kind of sit and mature the last little bit, get those starches to convert to sugars so you've got a good flavor. If an early frost is coming, that's one of the few times that you would want to harvest early. A light frost would only scar the rind, but a hard frost getting into the 28 degrees, that is where you need to just harvest the squash because they're going to get wrecked out on the vine. So when you harvest them, those ones just won't have as good a flavor. They won't keep as long, but you can still pull them in and get some usable flesh from that. So the curing process. This is where when you let the squash rest, it really improves the flavor. And it also lets the squash prepare for long-term storage. So you're improving the flavor and you're making it last longer. And to do this, you're basically leaving it in a warm area where it can finish ripening before you put it in a cool, dark area to store. So some good spots for this would be like a porch. Another one could be a greenhouse. You want somewhere where it's going to be warm, dry, sunny, good airflow so no bacteria or mold grow, but warm, 80 to 85 degrees. And this is just so that way the squash can, you're letting them sit for a week to 2 weeks, and what's happening is those starches that are in the squash are converting to sugars to have better flavor. So the shortest ones are acorn and delicata. They really only need a week, while the hard-skinned squash, butternut, Hubbard, spaghetti, kabocha, they want closer to the 2 weeks. And then once you've finished curing them, that's when you're going to store them so they can last quite a while. And you can get 5 to 7 months out of the really thick skin ones, Hubbard and kombucha, 3 to 6 months out of butternut, squash, and spaghetti. So they can last quite a while once you put them in a cool, dry storage area. And this is where we're trying to get the temperature down closer to 50, 55 degrees and a lower humidity. And that just helps them stay firm, not dry out, and not grow any mold or bacteria. So here's another kind of just infographic to show the different stages of immature to fully ripe on butternut squash. This nearly ripe stage is where a lot of people pick it. They're like, oh, it's turned the golden color, orange color, but it's still not that deep color that really gets it ripe. A couple frequently asked questions: what happens if you pick your squash too early? Unfortunately, it doesn't finish ripening after you pick it, but it still can cure. It's just not going to have that same flavor, and it's not going to have the same shelf life. And then the same thing about eating it right after you harvest. You can do it. It's just those starches haven't had a chance to convert to sugars, so it's not going to have that sweet, rich flavor. One of the few times that it is recommended to harvest them early is if the vine is dying or if that frost is coming, because that's where no more energy is going to get put into that plant anyways. So go ahead and harvest it now. So I hope that helps everyone as you are harvesting your winter squash this season, and you all have a delicious meal for your holiday dinners.